What does a man think about as he waits to die? Does he remember the crime, the victim's face, or does he block it all out, trying to make peace with his final hours? On May 11, 2006, Anthony Floyd Wainwright lay strapped to a gurney in Florida State Prison. The lights were harsh. The room was silent except for the hum of machines and the steady ticking of time. He had been convicted of a brutal crime more than a decade earlier, one that stole the life of a 23-year-old mother and left a scar on a quiet Florida town. That day, he received his last meal. He spoke his final words. And then he was gone. But this isn't just a story about an execution. It's about how a man born into poverty, raised in dysfunction, and consumed by addiction walked the road to death row. It's about a violent act that could have been prevented. And it's about justice and whether it ever truly brings peace. This is the story of Anthony Floyd Wainwright, his life, his crime, and the final moments that ended it all. Stay with us until the end, because the most haunting part of this story isn't how it ends. It's how easily it could have happened to anyone. The making of a killer. Anthony Floyd Wainwright was born in 1973 in the state of Florida. Like many death row inmates, his life didn't begin with murder. It began with struggle. From a young age, Anthony's environment was marked by instability. Public records and interviews suggest he came from a broken home, possibly abusive, with very little structure or support. He dropped out of school early, never earning a diploma. His life was already on a dangerous path by his teenage years. By the time most kids were learning to drive or thinking about college, Wainwright was already known to law enforcement. Theft, breaking, and entering drug possession, his rap sheet was growing fast. But while these crimes may have seemed petty at first, they revealed a deeper pattern. Anthony didn't fear consequences. Those who knew him described him as volatile, angry, and increasingly unpredictable. He bounced between jobs, never stayed anywhere long, and surrounded himself with the wrong crowd. Drugs played a central role in his descent. Crack cocaine in particular became his escape from reality. But addiction didn't just make him unstable, it made him dangerous. He began to rely on crime to feed his habit, and as his desperation grew, so did the violence of his actions. Wainwright wasn't a criminal mastermind. He didn't plan elaborate heists or make headlines for clever escapes. He was impulsive, reckless, and angry, and that combination would one day cost a young woman her life. By 1994, Anthony Wainwright was spiraling, and Florida was about to witness just how far he would fall. The crime that shocked Florida. It was March 11, 1994, a Friday night in Lake City, Florida, the kind of small town where most people leave their doors unlocked and know their neighbors by name. But that sense of peace was about to be shattered. Donna Callahan had just finished her evening shift at Walgreens. She was 23 years old, a mother of two, and had her whole life ahead of her. That night, she walked out of the store and into the parking lot, likely thinking of home, her children, and the weekend ahead. She never made it. Waiting nearby were two men, Anthony Floyd Wainwright and Justin Parks. Both were high-armed and looking for a victim. They needed a car, fast, and they didn't care who they had to hurt to get one. Wainwright and Parks approached Donna as she reached her vehicle. What happened next was terrifying and swift. They forced her into her own car at gunpoint. It was a violent abduction, one that left no time for her to scream or run. They drove her out of town to a remote wooded area off a quiet back road. Donna must have known what was coming. She pleaded. She begged. But these men weren't interested in mercy. In the woods, Donna was sexually assaulted. Afterward, she was forced to her knees and shot in the head. Her body was left there discarded like trash while her killers drove off in her car. It was senseless. It was brutal. And it was over in less than an hour. After the murder, Wainwright and Parks fled. They used Donna's credit cards at gas stations and convenience stores across state lines. Her stolen vehicle was their getaway car. They thought they were in the clear, but they were wrong. Lake City police launched a full-scale investigation. Donna was reported missing almost immediately after failing to return home, And soon, small clues began to surface: witnesses who had seen two suspicious men in the parking lot, and surveillance footage from stores showing Donna's stolen cards being used. It was only a matter of time before the net closed in. Wainwright and Parks hadn't just taken a life. They had triggered a manhunt. The hunt and the arrest. Once authorities confirmed that Donna Callahan's credit cards were being used in Alabama and Mississippi, the case shifted from a local missing person investigation to an interstate manhunt. The FBI got involved. Surveillance images clearly showed two men using the cards, and soon their names were known. Anthony Floyd Wainwright and Justin Parks became fugitives. They were located just days later in Mississippi. The stolen car led law enforcement straight to them. When local officers made the arrest, Wainwright and Parks didn't resist. It was over, but the horror of what they had done was only beginning to come to light. Under interrogation, both men began to talk, but neither was willing to take full responsibility. In a twisted blame game, each pointed the finger at the other. Wainwright claimed Parks pulled the trigger. Parks said it was Wainwright. Despite the finger-pointing, both admitted to being involved in the abduction and assault. Their confessions painted a gruesome picture of Donna's final moments. Once in custody, they were extradited back to Florida, where prosecutors prepared for what would be one of the most disturbing murder trials in the state's recent history. Both men were charged with first-degree murder, sexual battery, armed robbery, and kidnapping. The state made its position clear for Wainwright: they would seek the death penalty. There was no media circus, no national spotlight, just two young men, now accused murderers, facing the full weight of Florida law. And for Donna Callahan's family, it was the beginning of a painful journey through the justice system. A journey that would take over a decade and end in a cold, sterile death chamber. The trial. The trial of Anthony Floyd Wainwright began in 1995 in a Florida courtroom. The mood was heavy. For the family of Donna Callahan, it was their first chance to confront the man who had taken her life. But justice would not come without hearing every devastating detail. The prosecution didn't hold back. They laid out the facts with brutal clarity: a young woman ambushed in a Walgreens parking lot, forced into her car, taken to the woods, raped, and executed. Prosecutors described the crime as calculated and merciless, pointing to Wainwright as the instigator. They played audio from his confession. Jurors listened to Wainwright describe in his own words how Donna pleaded for her life, how she cried, how she begged, and how he ignored her. The defense team, faced with overwhelming evidence, had little room to maneuver. They attempted to paint Wainwright as a man destroyed by drug addiction. They claimed he wasn't in his right mind at the time of the crime, that the crack cocaine had taken over. But it wasn't enough. The jury saw a man who had made choice after choice. From the abduction to the assault to pulling the trigger, this wasn't a single moment of madness. It was a series of decisions. Calculated, cruel, unforgivable. The trial didn't drag on for weeks. It didn't need to. After only a few hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty on all counts. And with that, Anthony Floyd Wainwright was sentenced to die by lethal injection. His accomplice, Justin Parks, received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Though the court acknowledged both were involved, it was Wainwright's role in the killing that sealed his fate. For the Callahan family, it was a small step toward closure, but the wait for justice was far from over. Life on death row. After the sentencing, Wainwright was transferred to Florida State Prison, the same facility where dozens of men have spent their final days on death row. He was now inmate number 092867. Death row in Florida isn't like the movies. It's silent, isolated. Time doesn't pass, it drips. Wainwright spent 23 hours a day alone in a small concrete cell. His food was slid through a slot in the door. He had no access to the general prison population, no television, no social interaction beyond a few words exchanged with guards. He had time to think about what he'd done, time to remember Donna Callahan's face, time to wait. He filed multiple appeals, standard procedure in death penalty cases. He argued that his legal team had been ineffective, that the trial had been biased, that his addiction had played a greater role than the jury had considered. All appeals were denied. Wainwright remained mostly quiet throughout his time on death row. He didn't seek media attention. He didn't write books or blog posts. He didn't claim innocence. There were no petitions, no rallies, no documentaries pleading his case. Years passed, and then in early 2006, the date was set, May 11th. After more than a decade of waiting, the state of Florida was ready to carry out the sentence. The final hours. The night before his execution, Anthony Floyd Wainwright was moved to the death watch cell, a small holding cell, just feet from the execution chamber. There, under constant surveillance, he waited for the sun to rise one final time. On the morning of May 11, 2006, Wainwright woke up knowing it would be his last day alive. He was given the opportunity to speak with a spiritual advisor. He accepted. He was allowed to make a final statement for the record. That would come later. But first came the final meal. He made his request early in the day, 2 bacon cheeseburgers with everything a fried egg sandwich, French fries with both ketchup and mayonnaise, orange juice, cookies, and chocolate milk. A simple, heavy, familiar meal, one last indulgence before the end. As the afternoon wore on, he remained calm. No last-minute legal challenges were filed. No signs of fear or anger, just silence. At 6:00 p.m., guards came to his cell. They asked if he was ready. He stood up. No resistance, no words. He was led down the short hallway to the execution chamber. The room was cold. The witnesses were in place. It was time. The last meal. There's something haunting about a last meal. It's more than just food, it's a glimpse into a person's final state of mind. For Anthony Floyd Wainwright, his last meal was indulgent but unremarkable. No lobster, no steak, no wine, just comfort food. He requested 2 bacon cheeseburgers with everything, French fries with ketchup and mayonnaise, a fried egg sandwich, orange juice, cookies, and chocolate milk. Simple, familiar, heavy. Some say these meals reflect the inmate's childhood, their final connection to normalcy. Others say it's just one last act of control in a world where they've lost all of it. Wainwright ate in silence. No special requests, no delay tactics. When asked if he was satisfied, he nodded. There was nothing in his demeanor to suggest panic or even reflection. He didn't speak to the media. He didn't ask for forgiveness publicly. He just ate, waited, and watched the clock. And when the time came, he stood up and walked toward the death chamber without a word. Final words. At 6:00 p.m. on May 11, 2006, Anthony Floyd Wainwright entered Florida's execution chamber. He was strapped to the gurney arms, extended IV lines inserted. His head rested against a white pillow. He looked up straight ahead as a small group of witnesses watched from behind glass. Among them were members of Donna Callahan's family. They had waited over 12 years to see this moment, to face the man who had taken their daughter, sister, mother. The warden asked if Wainwright had any final words. He took a breath and said, "I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I hope my death brings peace. I accept my punishment. I'm ready to go." That was it. No drawn-out speech. No blaming others. No claims of innocence. He closed his eyes. At 6:07 p.m., the first drugs were administered. A powerful sedative began to slow his heart. Within moments, his breathing became shallow. His chest rose and fell, then stopped. At 6:18 p.m., Anthony Floyd Wainwright was pronounced dead. There were no tears, no outbursts, just a quiet end to a brutal chapter. And for the Callahan family, it was the closest thing to closure they would ever get. After the execution, Donna Callahan's family spoke briefly to the press. Her mother said, "It doesn't bring Donna back, but this ends a chapter we've been trapped in for 12 years. There was no celebration, only relief." As for Justin Parks Wainwright's accomplice, he remains incarcerated, serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. While he didn't receive the death penalty, his fate is sealed behind bars. Wainwright's execution marked Florida's 61st since the state reinstated capital punishment in the 1970s. His name is now just one among many in the state's death penalty archives. But the impact of his crime lingers in Lake City. For those who knew Donna, the pain never truly left. She wasn't just a victim, she was a daughter, a friend, a mother of 2 children who had to grow up without her. In the years since the story has faded from the headlines, no documentaries, no movements, no true crime specials, just a brutal crime, a quiet execution, and the memory of a life taken too soon. Justice in the legal sense was served. A man was tried, convicted, and executed for a crime so cruel it left a community shattered. But justice doesn't always bring understanding, and it never brings the victim back. So we're left asking the same questions that linger after every execution. What leads a man to do something like this? Was it drugs? A broken childhood? A lifetime of bad choices? Or was it something darker, something that had always been there? Anthony Wainwright didn't fight his execution. He didn't beg for mercy. He didn't try to delay the inevitable. He accepted his fate. But does acceptance equal remorse? And in his final words, "I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I accept my punishment." Was there truth or just performance? We'll never truly know. What we do know is this Donna Callahan's life mattered. She was a young woman working a simple job, raising her kids, living a normal life, until someone like Wainwright took it all away. And that's why we tell these stories. Not to glorify killers, but to remember victims. To learn. To ask questions. To keep the past from repeating itself. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more true stories from behind prison walls, deep dives into lives lost, justice served, and the final moments of death row inmates. Next week, we'll uncover the shocking case of a prisoner whose final words sparked outrage across the nation. Until then, stay aware, stay human, and remember, behind every crime is a story, behind every name a life, and behind every headline a consequence.